lesson for this morning comes from 1 Peter, the first chapter, verses 13 through 16. Therefore, prepare your minds for action. Discipline yourselves. Set all your hope on the grace that Jesus Christ will bring you when he is revealed. Like obedient children, do not be conformed to desires that you formerly had in ignorance. Instead, as he who called you is holy, be holy yourselves in all your conduct. For it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. These are the words of God for the children of God this day. Thanks be to God. This morning I want to explore with you a simple invitation. It's an invitation that lies at the heart of our faith. To miss this invitation is to miss out on what the Christian faith is all about. It's an invitation that comes from the very heart of God. It's an invitation that if we take it seriously can ever change our lives profoundly and deeply. It's an invitation that if we respond to it, it leads us to God's goal for the life that you and I have to live. To miss this invitation is to miss the goal that God has for your life and for mine. That goal, in a nutshell, is simply this: to share in the holiness of God. Look again at this morning's scripture lesson's last two verses. Like obedient children, do not be conformed to the desires that you formerly had in ignorance. Instead, as he who called you is holy, be holy yourselves in all your conduct. For it is written, you shall be holy, for I am holy. Now, let's be completely honest. I have a hunch that many of you may not be too excited about this invitation. Why? Because we have mixed feelings about what is holiness. What does it mean? It's a strange word. It sounds a little odd. For many of us, it's a word that even carries negative connotations. Why, if I was to point you out to a door this morning, and on the outside of that door was a sign that said, Holiness Entrance. I wonder how many of us would want to walk through that door. And if we did walk through that door marked holiness, I wonder, what would we expect to find inside? Last weekend, I read a book titled Born a Crime. It's a memoir about growing up in South Africa by Trevor Noah, who is the host of the cable TV program, The Daily Show. As a teenager, Trevor was a wheeler-dealer and could get stuff that all the other kids wanted but couldn't acquire on their own. It's how he made his spending money. Trevor had connections. One time, a few of Trevor's friends came to him and wanted Trevor to acquire for them something that they could never afford the money to purchase. So they made a deal with Trevor. They promised to hook him up with a really hot girl to be his date for the school dance. Being promised that he is going to be hooked up with a hot date motivated Trevor to get the deal done for his friends. Now imagine this same scenario with one twist. This time, Trevor's friends walk up to him and say, "Trevor, we need this stuff. We can't afford to pay you for it in money, but we can arrange a date for you with a really holy girl." Not hot, but holy. I wonder if Trevor would have looked forward or even taken that deal. Be honest. If you were Trevor, what would you do? Make a deal to go out with someone who is really, really holy? So here's the conundrum this morning. Since we have, in some ways, some negative thoughts about holiness, if I'm going to get you to consider this invitation from God, then I need to provide you with a better picture of what holiness is. And the great good news is that God gives us a very beautiful picture of this holiness God calls us to. We celebrate that the bottom line of our Christian faith rests in the knowledge that God has come to us in Jesus Christ. The invisible, the incomprehensible, the mysterious God of creation has stepped into human history in the life of Jesus Christ. And in Jesus, God displays his holiness. Jesus gives us the human face of holiness. He shows us how holiness looks like, what it looks like in the mix and muddle and heartbreak of this world. And when we look at Jesus in holiness, Jesus turns all the our ideas of what holiness is about upside down. You will note, as you follow Jesus through the Gospels, you will discover that Jesus is always himself. Always himself. He doesn't wear masks. He doesn't pretend. He doesn't put on airs to influence people. He doesn't play religious games. You almost have this sense that here in this life is a deep consistency, a deep sense of integrity. You sense it in the way he talks, in the way he feels, acts, and thinks. They all hang together. That's holiness. Holiness is a deep integrity of being, a consistency of character. To be holy is to become the person God genuinely wants you to become and not pretend to be someone else. Author C.S. Lewis made a statement that I just love. He said, "The more we let God take us over, the more truly ourselves we become. Because God made us. God invented us. God invented all the different people that you and I were intended to be. It is when I turn to Christ, when I give myself up to his personality, that I first begin to have a real personality of my own." That's holiness. It's holiness. There's an old Jewish legend that when we arrive in front of God on Judgment Day in heaven, God is not going to ask any of us, "Why weren't you David? Why weren't you Abraham? Why weren't you more like Noah or more like Moses? Why weren't you like Ruth, Naomi, Mary, or Rebecca?" No, God will not give us that question at all. Instead, God will ask, "Why did you not become the person I created you to be?" That's holiness. To be holy is to be the unique person God created each of us to be. Follow Jesus throughout the Gospels, and you will notice how he relates to people, who he relates to, and how he responds to them. He sees a lonely tax collector up in a tree, and he says to him, "Hey, Zacchaeus, can I come to your house today?" Note how Jesus responds when he feels the touch of a desperate woman long ill. See Jesus as he plays with the children his disciples want to push away. Then there's the woman caught in the act of adultery. Those surrounding her want to stone her to death. But Jesus lifts up her head, looks her in the eye, and says, I don't condemn you. Then Jesus gives her a vision for her new life. That's holiness. That's holiness. To become holy like Jesus is to let the love of God fill us and then flow through us. He is single-minded and single-focused. Jesus is fully abandoned to living out God's will, God's holiness. That purity of heart, that single-mindedness, that's holiness. To be holy like Jesus is to abandon ourselves to God and to seek God's will to be fully reflected from our lives. We are called to reflect it in the ways we relate to one another, especially in how men relate to women. And we still have a long way to go as a society to do that properly, to do that in a holy way. To seek God's will and how we live within our privileges in this nation. And we are a nation that is deeply and richly privileged. To seek God's way in how we live in a society that is so deeply divided on so many important realities. To seek God's will and way in my life, in my vocation, my avocations, and how I live each day. That's holiness. I recently discovered a new person to admire, and I'm going to butcher his last name. His name is Charles de Foucauld. He will soon be canonized as a saint. All of the steps have been taken care of. He was a Catholic priest who lived in the northern parts of Algeria in the early part of the 20th century amongst the Tuareg people. He lived on his own. He cared for the people and never made demands on them, but passionately cared for them. He offered the people food, water, friendship, hospitality, and prayers anytime they needed them. He sought to live out the gospel fully in his life amongst the Tuareg people. Unfortunately, a group of young ne'er-do-wells kidnapped him one day and were surprised by other people. And Father Charles was accidentally killed. When they gathered up his possessions to send them home, they found a prayer he had written in his Bible. The prayer simply and powerfully said, Father, I abandon myself into your hands. Do with me what you will. Whatever you may do, I thank you. I am ready for all. I accept all. Let only your will be done in me and in all your creatures. I wish no more than this, O Lord. Into your holy hands I commend my soul. I offer it to you with all the love of my heart. For I love you, Lord, and so need to give myself, to surrender myself into your hands without reserve and with boundless confidence, for you are my God. Amen. To become holy like Jesus is to become the person we are created to be consistent, to be a person of integrity, It's to become a person who is so full of God's deep compassion and concern that it spontaneously just flows from us out into the world. It's to abandon ourselves with joy, confidence, and freedom. That's holiness. It's God's goal for us in our lives. I hope some way you'll want to explore this invitation from 1 Peter. If you do, here are a few helpful steps on that road. First is simply to understand this. We don't make ourselves holy. It is Jesus who comes to live within us, who by the power of his Spirit makes us holy. As we live for Jesus, as we place our lives in his hands, he comes to live within us. It is his Spirit that begins to refashion us into our true selves. It's that Spirit which helps us to be faithful to God. I want to invite you to do that. We never stop turning to Jesus. We are to be always asking him to come into our lives and to begin the work, the ongoing work of reproducing something from us that reflects him out into the world, his holiness. There is nothing automatic in the Christian life, but there are some things we can do to help cooperate with God's Spirit working in our lives. These are practices that Jesus did in his own life. The first is simply this: stop. Stop. Stop what you are doing and just say, Spirit of God, come and be with me now. Push the pause button on life and all of its hecticness and ask God to come in. We live too much on autopilot. We are just go, 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 aren't we? Last Sunday around noontime, I finally started to feel like I wanted to do something. So I opened up this 3,000-piece Lego puzzle I was given. 3,000 pieces that I could use to construct one picture of one beetle. They were tiny little pieces, tiny. It was tedious work. I organized all the different colors into numbered Ziploc bags. I had 9 separate building blocks to construct. Each took almost 280 pieces and over 40 minutes to complete. But I was having fun seeing this picture slowly begin to emerge and take shape. I got so into wanting to see the final picture that I wanted to complete it before I went to bed on Sunday night. I was in full go, go, go mode. But I was also getting tired. And getting tired, I was seeing the lines of the instructions incorrectly. I was making mistakes, a lot of them. I was having to take pieces off and rearrange them, and I started to grumble, first internally and then out loud. That's when God's voice entered the living room that sounded an awful lot like Sue's voice, that said to me, maybe you need to take a break. You need to stop. Stop. But I didn't want to walk away, so I kept at it. But I was getting nowhere fast. Finally, I listened to God's voice, and I stopped. I walked away. I walked away from the project for the rest of the day. And the next morning had the refreshed joy of working on it and seeing it come to completion. We live hectic go-go lives, and here's today's news flash. Hectic and holy don't go together. Push the pause button. Stop and allow the Spirit of God to occupy your life, your actions, and your responses more deeply. That's holiness. And this one final short point that I see all over the Gospels, and it's probably the most difficult. Hang out. Spend time with 2 or 3 people regularly who are really suffering, who are really in a bind. Just hang out with them. Spend time with them. Don't avoid the suffering that's in our midst. The one thing that really concerns me about our lives today is that we are growing to be a suffering-avoiding culture. We need to allow ourselves to feel the suffering of others personally and deeply, to be affected by it. And as we do that, God's Spirit is able to work more fully and deeply. And we find that our hearts of stone are beginning to beat because they're being transformed into hearts of flesh and blood. That's the picture of Jesus-looking holiness. To become holy is to become who we are meant to be, our genuine selves. It's to become compassionate women and men through whom God's love can flow through us and out to others. As the hymn of the church says, "Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for thee. Here am I, all of me. Take my life, it's all for thee." Thanks be to God. Amen. So, go and allow God's vision to be the vision of God's holiness, living in and flowing from you.